this brings us back to thinking about television as a dynamic cultural form. I think that it is really important that we think about those television shows that have resistant representations, right? Those shows that depict race and gender and class and sexuality in different unexpected ways. That, of course, is important. But if you look at our 4 scholarly articles for the week, those 4 don't really find a whole lot of resistance within specific representations. So this draws us to a large point of thinking about resistance around television, besides just what's on television. So for Jennifer Esposito in her reading of Ugly Betty, resistance can be found in becoming aware of these older ideologies, and not just naturalizing Ugly Betty as a form of resistance. In Nancy Young's article, finding resistance around television involves refusing to make these Asian American actors into objects. Because even though oftentimes they're depicting Asian Americans as objects, they themselves are actually possessors of really complicated subjectivities. For Hiram Perez, resistance can be found in remembering what we've been coerced into forgetting, right? His article goes on these really interesting discussions involving legal cases and policy debates, and how all of these are things that we forget when we too quickly celebrate diversity as automatically being resistance. And fourthly, Cho Noriega's article forces us to recognize that resistance is already in the process of being incorporated back into hegemony once it becomes recognized, right? That's what he means in talking about beautiful identities, in that, on the one hand, it is a way of recognizing previously excluded Latinas and Latinos, but it's also, through that recognition, already becoming part of the new terms of hegemony. So, taking a step back from talking about the specific week and talking about the course as a whole, we haven't talked a whole lot about the comparative aspect of the course, putting Asian American and Latina and Latino popular cultures into conversation. So, here's a list that we can use to start talking about these points of comparison between the two. Because we don't want to flatten Asian Americans and Latinas and Latinos. Because as we read in the readings of week 1, there's immense diversity that exists within Asian American communities, just as there's immense diversity that exists within Latina and Latino communities. But we can think about these shared processes and struggles between the two groups. So for example, we can think about struggles to have subjectivity and identity recognized on equal terms. These issues of subjectivity can include things such as the generation gap, which is addressed in both the graphic novel Shortcomings, as well as the comic strip Baldo. Or these issues of subjectivity like existing among stereotypes, which is depicted in the documentary for the week, Latinos Beyond Rio, as well as through some of the features on the cable access channel Mixed TV, which we're also looking at this week. A second point of comparison is how oftentimes through engaging these issues of subjectivity, we can understand Asian American and Latina and Latino popular cultures as engaging subjectlessness as a form of social critique. Right? Subjectlessness, you'll recall from last time, refers to paying attention to those cultural and social structural issues that impact our lives. So for example, when Asian Americans and Latinas and Latinos make campaigns against racism, we can understand them as being in conversation. A third point of comparison that we can think about are these shared processes and barriers to being able to tell our stories from community perspectives. We see this in Nancy Young's article about Asian American actors, and we can also see this in Costanza Chalk's article from last time about immigrant rights groups on the internet and the sort of barriers that exist there. Some of these processes and barriers we can also understand in terms of historical stereotypical depictions of Asian Americans and Latinas and Latinos. While these stereotypes are very different, we can also understand their points of comparison when we think intersectionally, right? How have sexual norms been used to stereotype Asian Americans and Latinas and Latinos? How have gender norms been seen as things that Asian Americans and Latinos can't claim in the same way as white people? Or how can we understand class norms as something that are always out of reach for Asian Americans and Latinos? And the fourth point of comparison that we can think about is how through popular culture, everyday Asian Americans and Latinos negotiate racial formations and also find ways of resistance, either through issues of production or through issues of consumption and representation. Okay? So, I hope you have a great week. I look forward to your primary text postings, and let me know if you have any questions.